in meeting the consumer, where do you see the market and the consumer 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and with the millennials, quote unquote? How do you plan to shift for their needs and desire for consumption?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I don't think anyone has the perfect answer to that, right? That's what everybody's struggling with, is where is everything going and how to get out ahead of it. I do think we've seen millennials are starting to have kids, and millennials are also moving to out into suburbs. I know I read something off of your blog where you had retweeted something along those lines. I think we'll continue to see that, and as they've moved into that space, and continue to move into that space, the suburban space and young families. I think what we're seeing and what we're hearing is that convenience is becoming more and more important to them. That's where delivery is critical. That's where rapid pickup is critical. So I think in terms of channels, being able to meet that need with drive-thrus, with rapid pickup, with delivery is going to be more important than ever. And then I think the other big component is what's going to happen in terms of the products that they're looking for. And I think everybody's seeing, certain trend lines happening where, one where Panera was on the forefront with clean food and taking out all artificial additives and preservatives. And I think they're going to want and continue to want healthy food. They're going to want to know where their food is coming from, especially for their children. And I think we're playing off a base of being a very trusted brand in that regard. And I think meeting their needs in terms of craveable food, but food that's good for you and food that they understand where it comes from and that it's healthy is going to be critical. And I think that's the trend line over the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay. So, and that, I appreciate that context. So in 3 to 5 years, and for lack of better terms, fast food, QSR, define what that means or what that looks like going forward. And does Grubhub or delivery or RPU, does that change that definition of what fast food is?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that that definition will probably become more about the product over time and less about the delivery of that product, if you follow what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think those lines in terms of the convenience factor, if you think of QSR, quick serve, the first two letters of that, those lines are becoming more blurred. So I think you had the fast casual wave, which is really what Panera was also a pioneer on, is what is fast casual and being able to come in and get a sit down dining quality experience with your food, but at a potentially a lower price point and also in a quicker fashion than casual dining was able to offer. As you saw that come in, I think the multi-channel aspect of what we're seeing is blurring the lines between those historic definitions. And I think that you are able to see, even in the casual dining world, you see pickup spaces where they'll run the food out to you because they recognize that they need to be more convenient. And then also delivery playing into this is also further blurring the lines between some of these historic definitions. So I think we'll continue to see those lines get blurred as everybody works towards becoming more convenient and meeting the consumer where they want to be met. And then I think the true delineators, as people are able to build their channels that way, the true delineator will be in the product itself, and the experience that you're able to provide the consumer, whether it's QSR or whether it's an elevated experience in the fast casual space like Panera or traditional casual dining.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that was great. Good insight there. I'm resonating off a recent article I read in the Wall Street Journal regarding precipitous bankruptcy, etc., of our future generations. You know, if stats are true that by 2025, millennials are going to prefer balance over money, how will people afford to eat out? And then how will Panera make it economical, competing with what would be perceived as a price war at that point to garner the affectations of, you know, these millennials?
Well, I think rather than price, I would frame it as value. I do think value takes everything into account, right? It's the consumer believing that whatever product you're giving them, at whatever experience you're giving them, is worth what they're paying for. And I think it is going to be about value pressure. Now, that's different than price pressure, because price pressure is limited to what you spend versus the totality of what you're getting for what you spend. So I do think that there'll be a lot of pressure on value. I do think there's a heavy influx of food that we've seen in the entire industry. If you look at what's happened as we've gone through sort of the retail apocalypse and things being, or the so-called retail apocalypse and retail repositioning, you have seen a ton of food come into play, and probably at a level that's outpacing the increased demand, because we are seeing as an overall trend line, people eating out more and more and more. If using the term eating out to mean, just out of house, because that could also mean delivery. That could also mean, any of these other channels that we talked about. I think that trend line will continue due to time pressures that exist. And then I think we will see some fallout, and I do think it'll be very competitive in the food space. And I think, again, you're going to have to compete on the value front. So it is going to be about creating craveable food that people want. I think for us, we also look at our pantry and our ability to play in all day parts, our ability to play in the AM day part. We've historically been strongest at lunch, but, we're expanding into wraps. We've rolled out fresh wraps that we just started a marketing campaign on for the morning day part, lunch, as well as expanding into the PM day part. And we've just started to look at that at this point. But I think the size of our pantry we view as one of our strengths to play in that space too, so that we can give people variety and they can select a wide array of different products throughout the week. For us, we're not a limited menu the way some other competitors are. So I think, to answer your question, I do think we'll see increased pressure on the value front, but I think it is going to come down to selection, quality, what kind of food am I getting, where is my food coming from, is my food clean, and is this a food that's craveable and that I want, over and over again. So I think there will be increased pressure for all competitors to play in that space, and whoever, like anything, whoever can do that best is going to be best situated to succeed in that environment. Excellent response.
You've given me quite a bit of information, and you may or may not have answered this last question I have for you today, Rob. And there are elements of your last response that do, but I'm just going to ask it on a clean slate. And that is, if we close our eyes and think about Panera, what is the mindset of your consummate Panera consumer going to be in the next 5 years? What is that? What is that kernel of truth? What holds dear to them in their head when they're thinking about Panera?
I think it's the word I use, which is trust and belief that we're an ally for wellness. We're an ally for healthy eating. I think we believe that's our foundation, and that's what our consumer wants. We think more and more consumers are going to start paying closer attention to what they're putting in their bodies. We're seeing, we've historically been one of the brands, one of the few brands that vegetarians can migrate towards and find good food that they enjoy eating. I think we're going to continue to see that. Plant-based proteins are obviously a trend line that we're hearing more and more about, and something that we're focused on as well. So I think for us, it's an ally for wellness. It's that trust word, and then it's craveable as well. Food that tastes good and is good for you. It's really kind of a simple equation, much more difficult to actually execute than say. But that's what we think our consumer is, and that's what we want to give our consumer. And staying out ahead of that and being visionary and introducing foods that they want and crave and know are good for them is going to be the challenge for us, and where we're headed over the next 3 to 5 years as we continue to grow.
Well, you've struck a chord with me, being a vegan myself, and I appreciate that insight that you posed, and in the direction and the intent that you guys are willing to put forth as regards to that.
Yeah, and that's where we think our what we call our pantry, which just refers to the amount of SKUs that we have in essence on the food side, is really unparalleled in our space, and allows us to offer that for those folks, and then offer obviously proteins for animal-based proteins for folks that want that as well. And so we view that as a strength. It adds complexity to our business. It makes things more challenging for us, but ultimately we think it's provides more choice for the consumer.
Excellent, Rob. I mean, really, really excellent. Hey, I want to thank you for your time. I don't want to take up any more of it, but I'd like to thank Rob Sopkin, the Chief Development Officer of Panera, for spending a few minutes with me today. And I look forward to always speaking with you, as you know, and you're near and dear to my heart. Thanks a lot, Rob.
I appreciate it.
We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.